In this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast, I speak to Ari Meisel about the importance of health to an entrepreneur like you, especially when you're starting to grow and rock it out. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to session 40 of the Purple Coffee Podcast, inspiring entrepreneurial stories from the world's coolest individuals. I am your host, Turndog, and on this occasion I speak to Ari Meisel, who is a cool cat indeed, and a worthy participant of not only this podcast but the successful mistake. He shares his great mistake, his grandest faux pas, and how he turned it around, and it all surrounds your health. As an entrepreneur, you probably take it for granted at times, working long hours, going to bed late, getting up early, sitting down far too much, going out for meetings and eating bad food. And all of this led to Ari and his big mistake. It's not to say that this was the determining factor for his Crohn's disease, but he thinks it played a pretty large factor. But he was able to turn it around and basically cure himself, not through medication, but just hacking his system, leading a more productive and stress-free lifestyle. And he now helps so many people. He's all about encouraging people to do less and live more. And who can't get on board with such an awesome saying? I absolutely love that philosophy. And he knows so much about things like productivity. It's uncanny. Oh yes, he's been able to really measure and track everything that he does, whether it's his food, how much he walks, the exercise he does. And he's learned more about his body and what his body needs, and it's ultimately meant he's led a very successful entrepreneurial lifestyle. So no matter who you are, whether you're just starting out in this entrepreneurial game, whether you're somewhat of an experienced head, or somewhere in between, you are probably not taking care of your body as much as you can. But fear not, because people like Ari are here to save your day. And he's such a cool guy. I encourage you to check out his podcast and his writing and everything else that he does. You'll be able to check all his links and the show notes at tdog.co/purplecoffee40. That's tdog.co/purplecoffee40. He is on this, kids. He is on this. You need to be following him. He's been such an inspiration to me and such a great help. And as recording of this, he's just about to do one of his biggest conferences and live events ever. He's got a few amazing people involved, and I can't wait to see how it all goes. And I'm rather jealous I'm not in New York, I must say. But that is for a different day, because right now we have an interview to talk about. I'm going to share that in just a jiffy. But first, I'll share a little bit more about Ari in story bio form, as I so often do. So here we go, shall we? Ari frickin' Meisel wants you to do less and live more. Don't you just hate it when someone comes along and tries to remove stress from your life and replace it with happiness? Wait, you don't hate people like this? Well, maybe you'll enjoy Ari in his ways then. He does, after all, rock this department out like a brand new department store, brimmed to the rafters with shiny new toys. Through sellout events, an incredible podcast, his writing, his courses and more, Ari helps you become more productive, less cluttered, and generally more happy with your day-to-day. He certainly brought clarity and serenity into my world, so I'm sure he'll help you too. I mean, when someone can help me, they can often help anyone. So listen to this lost cause. Speak to someone who knows all about awesome causes. Okay, thank you very much for joining me. A huge thank you to Ari Meisel, who's my guest today. An interesting person indeed, because Ari in 2006 was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which is apparently an incurable disease. However, Ari turned it around by hacking his health and tracking what he does and does not do, and turned it around and lives a relatively normal life these days. I say normal, but in actual fact, he does a lot of talks. He's the author of the book Less Doing, More Living, which is all about making life easier. And I will stop going on because Ari is much better at telling what he does than I am. So, first of all, Ari, thank you for joining me today. And
My pleasure.
please, just give us a bit of an overview of who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so basically, I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and mostly in tech. But I started working in construction about 15 years ago now, and I was building in upstate New York. And then in 2006, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease, which, as you said, is incurable. It's a chronic inflammatory condition that affects the digestive tract, and it's very painful and not very well understood. So I was taking a lot of medicine and getting sicker and sicker until one night in the hospital, I had a really, really bad night, and I basically decided I had to do something for myself that would be different. So I went on this long journey of self-tracking, self-experimentation, and after about 4 months, got off my meds and was in my competed in my first triathlon 2 months after that. So basically, I had figured out the nutrition, I'd figured out the supplements, and I figured out the fitness aspects, but there was still this large element of stress in my life. Stress causing inflammation as well as just stress in my life in general. So my response to that was to create a system of productivity that would help people free up their time by optimizing, automating, and outsourcing everything in their lives, including their health, in order to be more effective and free up their time and stress less.
It's a really interesting subject for me because I've just started hacking my own things and tracking things like health and sleep and my intake and whatnot. So I honestly cannot believe that I came across you now. It seems like a fantastic opportunity. I can't wait to read your book because I think it will align with a lot of what I'm trying to do at the minute and give me some amazing ideas. But this interview is in aid of my book, The Success Mistake, which is all about an entrepreneur's big mistake and how they turned it around. And like Harry says, he's been a lifelong entrepreneur, so I'm sure he's got a few golden nuggets to share with us. But I'm going to pass it over to you now, Ari. So please just tell us a tale about what went wrong and how you turned it around to be the man you are today.
Sure. Well, I still am a real estate developer, and less doing and the real estate development are my two main sort of focuses. But when I started in real estate development in 2003, and I was working in upstate New York, I was 20 years old. I graduated school early, and I was really in sort of unknown territory. The deal was that anybody that worked on the job had to teach me their trade. So I spent the next 3 years learning and doing every construction trade imaginable, and I was really in it, and I really, really learned construction. But the project was in a town, in a city called Binghamton, New York, which is a very economically depressed town. And what I was doing, I believe, was sort of ahead of the times. So it was not nearly as successful as I had expected it to be. When I was 23 years old, I was in $3 million of debt, and I was working my butt off, and I was not particularly healthy, and it ended up resulting in the Crohn's. And it's very possible that what I went through almost led to the Crohn's because it is stress induced in a lot of cases. So that was definitely hard to say if it was like a mistake, but it was definitely, well, no, at the time it was definitely a mistake. But having looked back, I can't say that I wouldn't have done it again.
Well, I think that's the great thing about mistakes in general because we hate them at the time. We think, oh my God, I can't believe I did this. But once you take a step back and then digest it all, usually you're able to turn it into something rather good, and it takes you on a whole new journey. And had it not been for that initial mistake, it wouldn't have taken on a new direction. So yeah, living life without regret, I suppose, is one of those in hindsight.
Well, it's also that whole idea of like stoicism. We can't change the bad events necessarily, but we can change our perception of them. And to me, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for that Crohn's diagnosis. I wouldn't be helping people with Crohn's. I wouldn't be helping people be more productive. I would, probably be just still doing construction and not being healthy myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dissect a little bit about where it all began. You were in construction and was it real estate? Yes.
Yep.
And you were really getting into there. Was the mistake just around working too much? Was it following other people's advice? What ultimately led you to be in that kind of debt and in that kind of world?
I would say that the mistake was probably jumping in without really doing my homework. So I would have, but again, like, because I can't say like I would have done it differently, but I definitely didn't do like my research. I didn't really do like the comp rolls. I just sort of was like this, 20-year-old kid. I was like, I want to do this project. It's going to be amazing. Like, bam, let's do it. And didn't plan it particularly well. I got in way over my head very, very quickly, and I got out of it, but it definitely wasn't the right way to do it. I mean, yeah, so it wasn't a mistake overall, but I know I would have done it differently. Like I think that there could have been ways to do the project that would have cost less and would have, phased into it so that I wouldn't have had such an issue with selling, basically.
And this is something I imagine at least is very common for a lot of new and young entrepreneurs because they have an idea, they're really eager to start working for themselves, creating a massive journey. They've got the degree and they've had a couple of jobs, so they feel like they're untouchable and they can take on the world. But once you start working for yourself and putting them big projects in place, it's a whole new world. I know I thought I was coming into the world of self-employment fairly well clued, and looking back, it was just, duck out of water. You look
Yeah.
back and think, oh my God, I can't believe I did this and I didn't plan for this beforehand. Doing your research and doing your homework really is an important aspect.
Yes, and I've since learned that a little bit better, I think.
Yeah, I think we all do over time. So it kind of led you down a pretty rough path, I guess. Was it linked to everything you were maybe eating less healthy?
Yeah,
You weren't
yeah,
doing
for
as much.
sure. I mean, I was stressing so much, so not only was I doing construction work, but I was also dealing with all the paperwork and the business aspect and running, a job and running the team. And I was also dealing with political aspects because it was sort of a new kind of project. So I was on community boards and, I was working 14 hours a day on a construction site. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I was eating fast food probably twice a day at least. And then I was drinking every night with my because I'd go out after work with the construction crew and I'd drink, and not to excess, but I mean it was just not healthy at all. My body, I was just beating the crap out of my body.
Yeah, and it really is a spiral. It's something I can emphasize with because once things starts becoming more stressful, you just look for an out elsewhere, and whether it's drink or food or just lolling in front of the TV and just avoiding what it is that's going on in your life. It's all these things kind of spiral out of control, whether it's depression or whether it's a physical ailment like what possibly led to your Crohn's disease. It can spiral out of control very quickly.
Exactly.
And I feel
Exactly.
stress is something that happens to pretty much every entrepreneur. I mean, I know that I go through it. You all of a sudden there's only 24 hours in a day, and you start looking at it, going, "Man, I wish I could make it into 25 and 30 and 35."
Well, the thing is that stress is a part of life. It's just like death is a part of life, but it's really how you respond to it, how you use it, and how you channel it. Because stress can be very motivating, of course,
Mm.
but it's when it becomes chronic and you've sort of lost a little control of it, I guess, is the way to frame it, that it becomes really detrimental. So stress in itself is not bad. It's really how we respond to it and how we move it in a way.
That's interesting. I like that. I like that. So, you had this disease in 2006. It kind of was a bit of a tipping point, I suppose. It forced you to look at your life and go, right, what can I change now? What do I need to change? So, what sort of happened around that time? Did you move away from your business? Did you change anything dramatically, or was it more health based?
It was all health based, because the thing is, healthy body, healthy mind, right? So like my body was kind of broken, my mind was kind of screwed too in a way. Like I couldn't think properly, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but I just wasn't able to come up with good ideas or have the headspace to even make good decisions. So it really was that bad night in the hospital, got out, and I just went extreme. I totally changed my diet, exercise, started experimenting with supplements, tracking everything I'd done, trying to find correlations in all the blood work that I'd had over the last the years before that. And yeah, I changed everything about myself.
Wow. And were you still doing, working on the business at this point, or did you take a bit of a step away?
So it sort of coincided with the first project of the business being done, of this real estate project being finished, and then I basically spent the last few years trying to sell the units that I had built, which I did finally, and actually have the last ones sort of finishing up now to be sold. But it was the kind of project I was expecting to build it and then sell everything in like 6 months, and it ended up taking 5 years basically to sell everything. So but at that point I had moved on to other real estate projects out in East Carolina, which is where I focus on now, which is a much better market to be doing real estate in anyway. And I've had some, because of that, I would say I've had some really really good successful projects now out here that I'm very proud of.
And I suppose that comes as a side thing from doing your homework. Sometimes you need to sort of mess up a couple of times for you to realize, oh, actually.
Exactly.
Mm. So all this new health, you must have felt like $1 million when you were doing all this, going from one extreme to another, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was like I'd been in the dark, and now my eyes were open. Really, that's what it felt like in so many ways.
And how long was the whole process of kind of coming to terms with the Crohn's disease? How long did it take for you to get from being diagnosed really bad to getting to a point where it wasn't as debilitating?
Uh, I was off my meds after 4 months. I'd say I didn't have any more pain after that. I mean, it took about a month or so, probably to 2 months to start feeling better, and then 4 months to be off my meds and really, really doing much better. But again, like I had figured out the nutrition and the fitness and the supplements, but I was doing good, but I wasn't doing great, and that's when I started to figure out the stress hacking element of it.
Wow, I mean that's such an amazing thing to overcome that in just a matter of a couple of months. And in
Yeah.
your case, it was you kind of had to. You had this physical disease going on inside your body, but I feel like with these different sort of hacks and trackings, it's just helps you overcome your stress. And whether you're feeling physically ill or not, or you're just feeling a little run down, these are the kind of things the majority of entrepreneurs could take on board and really revitalize their entire days and how they work.
Yeah, exactly. And it has been, not only has it been like a driving force in everything that I do since then, but it also gives me a lot of perspective on everything else. Sort of like it's sort of an extreme version of, not sweating the small stuff because nothing really compares to the pain or the experience that I felt then.
Wow, absolutely. So you talked about doing certain hacks and tracking your health and whatnot. Give us a few examples of the kind of things that you did and continue to do to this day.
So it's funny nowadays. I actually don't track very much because I've done so much. So this is the thing: is that people lose self-awareness. It's just a thing. There's too many things going on in our life, and so it's very hard for people to think about if they're feeling a certain way at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. They don't automatically have the mindset of like, oh, who was I with in the last 3 hours? What did I eat in the last 3 hours or 2 hours? Like, what's the weather? Like, we don't take that stuff into account, which is fine. It's sort of exhausting in some ways to think about all those things all the time. But once you start to track this stuff and you really do bring that self-awareness back to you, then you don't need the gadgets as much anymore. You don't need the data so much to kind of
Hmm.
recognize correlations and recognize how certain things make you feel.
So,
And actually, Chris Dancy, who is I interviewed a couple weeks ago, and he's the most like tracked guy in the world. Basically, it's really amazing. He told me that in all the tracking and stuff, it's like the number one thing that he tells people is that if you're feeling weird or like off or something, just think about who you've been with in the last 3 hours.
really,
Because and basically it's about getting rid of toxic people in your life, and that's of all the things he could be tracking. It just amazed me that that was sort of the main takeaway that he had for people. But it's true. Certain people can make you eat more. Certain people can make you bad sleep. Certain people make you drink more. Certain people make you more athletic. Like there's all sorts of effects that people have, and I forgot who said it, but it was that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, basically.
hmm, wow,
So, it's that self-awareness. And, if I wake up and I don't feel really well, like I can usually kind of figure out what it was. And if I have like a lull and, the 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I also usually know what it is. And you start to become more aware of this. So currently there's nothing that I'm specifically tracking, but I'm always playing around with different devices that people want me to test out.
but after a while, you do all that tracking. It kind of makes you just conscious to yourself all the time. You don't need to track because you just think, "Oh, I'm feeling a little bit tired now. Why am I tired? What have I done for the last few hours to make that so?" So,
Um,
so were you tracking pretty much everything you did during this point, like everywhere you
Yeah,
went?
I mean, I've tracked just about everything. So, location, movement, food, sleep, stress, mood, water intake, coffee intake. What else? I've done genetic testing. I've done stool samples, urine analysis, like skin galvanometer, sweat testing, dual X-ray absorptiometry. Like pretty much,
My
I've done everything I can think of at least.
my word. And was this all manual, or were you using things like apps and software on computers?
Both. I've tested. I mean, both. I've tested them with, some apps are really great. Some apps don't really cut it. And a lot of the fitness trackers out there are really just kind of glorified toys. There's a few though that are really amazing and legitimate.
Yeah. Wow. And you talked about outsourcing as well. This is something that, really sort of piqued my interest when I heard about this, because we think about outsourcing our business, whether it might be bookkeeping or, having a personal assistant check your emails. But I feel like you probably went an extra level there and outsourced things in your personal life, things to do with your health, your mental well-being, pretty much everything.
Well, yes. I mean, I would say so. I mean, I've done all sorts of consultations with different people, which is definitely a form of outsourcing. But the main outsourcing for me is that it's a big element of stress. Is that this idea of overloading our brain? So we need to create this external brain where we can have other things happening for us, other automated processes, and just ways of like getting ideas out of our head. So in a way, if something would take me more than 5 minutes to do, I would try to get a virtual assistant to do it or somebody else to do it, and that is very freeing in a lot of ways and very stress reducing. So that's a big part of it. But nowadays too, there's so many medical things that you can sort of outsource. There's crowdsource sites that help you like determine what's going on with you, and there's a website called Chronology for Crohn's where thousands of people put in like the different things that they've tried and how they've worked, and it really gives you some interesting information that you can use. So yeah, there are some ways to outsource your health in that regard.
That's fantastic. And so, I mean, it's led us to today. You've written a book. You do a great deal of talking and consultations, coaching, that kind of thing. You still work on, the construction, real estate side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Just how do you kind of keep up with everything now? Is stress just totally managed, and do you just feel sort of strong and healthy and everything most days, and it's just
Yeah.
all this?
Yeah, I mean, we have, we have three kids, we have a lot going on, and but yeah, basically, I don't, nothing, I don't really get stressed anymore.
Man, you see, we were talking a little bit just before we hit record about kids. I've got a little 15-month-year-old, so I don't quite have the stresses of the school runs just yet. But it is, once you get a family, it's that added aspect. Life can quite easily get hold of you. Stress, like you say, is a part of life. It's how you manage it rather than trying to just free yourself from it completely.
Right. You have to kind of accept that stress is there. It's always going to be there, and it's really just how you're going to deal with it that's going to matter.
Wow. And it's amazing that this entire journey began with just, a youthful individual who wanted to take on the world, had an idea, wanted to start a project, just went in gun ho, and it just led down a very stressful path, and it led to bad health, and potentially added to the cause of Crohn's disease. But you're able to free yourself in a matter of months, and I'm guessing you've been fairly stress free now for a good few years. You felt in a good place for that time.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. For 6 or 7 years now, totally fine, happy, like productive. Uh, Again, it's unfortunate in some ways that it required an event like that or an experience like that to get me to this place. But that's honestly how it works for a lot of people, whether it's the death of a loved one or a car accident or a chronic illness. Like that, some people just need wake up calls, and I was one of them.
Yeah, it's having that perspective of life afterwards. And I think the one thing that will give a lot of people hope is there'll be a lot of people who will watch and listen to this and think, oh, well, yeah, I would like to be healthy, but it takes months and it takes years to kind of get to that thing. But you turned it all around in, weeks more than anything. It's something you can make.
It takes one day to be healthier. That's what it takes. It's just to make a decision to change the way that you've been doing things. It takes one day to start.
And then I just guess it's down to discipline, just turning up day after day.
Yes, it is, but also when you do the right things, you see faster results. And I think that seeing the results makes people stick with it. But the reason I say that it takes one day is that you don't have to do big changes. You don't have to lose like 100 pounds in a month if you're that overweight. Like just, work on doing something every single day. Like it's the Seinfeld method in a way, don't break the chain. But it's true. Like if you do just a little bit every day. I give you a random example. I for the longest time, I could never read nonfiction. Like I just couldn't get through a book. Like I'd fall asleep, I'd be bored, I'd read it over and over. So there's a service called Daily Lit, which is a website that sends you basically a piece of the book. And there's thousands of books on there. Every day you get like a page or two, or 3 or 4 pages, depending on how long you want it to be. And I'd never read Around the World in 80 Days before. And I am now about halfway through that because every single day I get an email that takes me 7 minutes to read.
Yeah.
And I've been doing that every single day for I can actually tell you, for 27 days now, and I don't want to mess that up. I want to keep going. So I'm gonna, it's better than me trying to have read like 2 chapters at a time and failing and then putting the book down forever. I'm just reading a little bit every day, and that's all it takes.
Absolutely, that little but often. I remember reading an article from James Clear fairly recently where he said, you can just start
Average speed.
off, yeah, just do 10 press ups day one, and then day two do 11, and day three do 12, and just add little things. And I've been doing stuff like that of late, and it does make a huge difference. You don't have to, like you say, do massive changes in your life. Just start, make incremental little changes, and things go well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, what? So we're gonna pretty much just tie everything up now. You've given us a fantastic insight into your world and just how accessible and easy it is to make those changes. In your sense, it was very health related, but for some who maybe struggle with going to bed earlier or working later, maybe working up early, something along those lines, then it can be changed quite easily. You can just say, rather than waking up at 8 o'clock today, I'm going to wake up at 7:55, and I'm going to try and get it down eventually to 7:30 or 7 o'clock.
Right.
And it's these little changes, and you do them often enough, big things can happen. So in order to kind of make that happen, what would your advice be to a young slash new entrepreneur who is maybe feeling a little stressed and it's feeling like it's becoming a little bit debilitating? What would you kind of say to get going right now?
Basically, just like start with one little thing. That's the thing, is make one little change that you think you can make, and then keep doing that. And the smallest change, like micro goals, is really where it's at.
Right.
The smallest goals. Writing 10 words. Taking 20 steps. Like just the smallest goal. Start with that, and then do that every day.
Well, so just kind of honing on what you want to change, and then just make a really small goal and just build it up from there.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, I must say it's been an absolute pleasure, Ari. I think you've taken on an amazing journey. It's inspirational what you've achieved. And in your case, it was Crohn's disease. But I feel for an entrepreneur watching this, it could be just stress management. It could be down to time. It could be anything and everything. But your approach is applicable to pretty much everyone, I feel. Everyone can take something from that. So if you are interested in looking into things like that, make sure you check out his book, Less Doing, More Living. I'll be linking to Ari's website and all the various links that we've talked about today. So, Ari, thank you very much for joining me. Cheers.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
You too. Cheers. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me on this session of the Purple Coffee Podcast, and a big thank you to Ari as well. What an amazing guy he is, and what an inspiring story. Like I say, I'm pretty sure there were other factors to his Crohn's disease, but the fact that he believes his lifestyle played a part to it is warning enough that we all need to take a step back and look after our most prized asset, and that is, of course, our mortality, our body, our health. And he was able to just basically hack it, track it, measure it, see what does and doesn't work, and he's living such a more happy lifestyle now. It's ridiculous. He not only was able to pretty much eradicate the Crohn's disease, but become a more productive and awesome individual, and he's someone who just continues to do more and more in terms of speaking and events and his coaching and everything else. And yeah, he helps many folk like you and me. So I encourage you to check him out, because this story is just the scratching of his surface. You can find out about his world at tdog.co/purplecoffee40. That's tdog.co/purplecoffee40. All the show notes are there as well, but I, for the most part, encourage you to click on his links, follow him, say hello, and if you've got some questions about productivity and hacking your health and anything like that, he's a guy you should certainly reach out to. And when you're there, I hope you'll also consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing this very podcast on somewhere like iTunes. If you're listening to this on your phone and are unable to do it right now, fear not. You can do it later. I hope that you will, because it would mean so much. And if you know anybody who might enjoy this podcast, please share the love with them. It's amazing what a tweet or Facebook share can do. So make sure you go do that now if you want to send some Turn Dog love. But other than that, I will wish you well, bid you farewell, and hope to see you soon. Have a most awesome day. Lots and lots of love from Turn Dog HQ.